Inside the Monday morning coffee shop, the grinder screamed louder than any conversation. The air smelled of fresh beans and damp coats. The usual Seattle winter blend. A blonde woman, in a tailored red coat, stepped to the counter, her hands moving in precise, graceful gestures, American Sign Language, asking for an oat milk latte, no sugar. The barista, a young man with a name tag, reading Tyler, stared blankly, then smirked. "Lady, if you can't talk, maybe you shouldn't order," he said, loud enough for the nearby customers to hear. A few chuckled. One woman whispered to her friend. No one moved to help. The woman, Vivian Rhodes, kept her expression neutral, the practiced mask of someone who had endured this many times before. Then a man in a worn apron walked forward. Daniel Brooks, 36, night shift barista and single father. He signed to the little girl beside him, Sophie, who was waiting for him to finish so he could walk her to school. "She's like me, Dad," Sophie signed back, her small face bright with recognition. Daniel turned to Vivian and signed. "What would you like?" Vivian's eyes widened in surprise, then softened. She signed her order again, slower, grateful. Daniel relayed it to Tyler, who rang it up without another word. While the drink was prepared, Sophie stepped closer and signed to Vivian. "You're beautiful." Vivian knelt down, signed back, "So are you," and a single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but Daniel saw it, the loneliness in that quiet moment of being understood. When the latte was ready, Vivian placed a business card on the counter, signed "Thank you," and walked out into the rain. Daniel picked it up. Vivian Rhodes, CEO, Oralis Technologies. The name hit him like a punch. The company that had taken Rachel from him. The company that had killed his wife and buried the truth. Daniel Brooks had once been a promising AI engineer. 3 years earlier, he and his wife Rachel had worked side by side in the industry, sharing a modest suburban house with their daughter Sophie, who was born profoundly deaf but whose laughter filled every room. Rachel had been brilliant, passionate about making technology safer. Daniel had specialized in predictive systems, traffic patterns, human behavior analysis. They believed in the good their work could do. Then came the accident. A self-driving car from Oralis Technologies malfunctioned on a rainy highway. Its software failed to detect stopped traffic ahead. Rachel, crossing the street with groceries, never had a chance. The lawsuit Daniel filed was dismissed. Evidence vanished. The company's lawyers were too powerful, their resources endless compared to his grief. He lost his job for speaking out about corporate accountability. He lost the house when legal fees drained their savings. All that remained was Sophie, and a rage that had nowhere to go but inward. Now he worked nights at Seattle Brews, a small downtown cafe where the tips were decent and the questions were few. He lived in a cramped apartment on the city's edge, the heating barely functional, the walls thin enough to hear neighbors argue. Sophie's crayon drawings covered every surface, bright landscapes, finger-painted sunsets, a child's attempt to bring color into a world gone gray. Every evening before his shift, Daniel counted the cash in the kitchen drawer. Rent was due in 12 days. Sophie's tuition at the special school for deaf children was due in 15. He picked up extra shifts fixing cars on weekends, coming home with oil under his fingernails and exhaustion in his bones. On his wrist he wore a silver bracelet engraved with 5 words. "Listen with your heart." Rachel had given it to him on his last birthday before she died, back when they still believed the world rewarded good people. He never took it off. The morning Vivian walked in, the rain was punishing. Not the soft Seattle drizzle, but a cold downpour that soaked everyone. Vivian stood out tall, composed, her blonde hair in a neat twist, a discreet hearing aid tucked behind her left ear. She had learned early that the world would not always be kind. Vivian had lost her hearing at 10. She remembered the explosion in her mother's lab, the sharp sound before the silence. Her mother died instantly. The blast shattered Vivian's eardrum and severed the nerves. Her father, Gregory Rhodes, founder of Oralis Technologies, taught her that power was the only voice people respected. He raised her to be untouchable, to never show weakness, to use wealth and control as armor. Vivian learned sign language in private, but refused to use it publicly. She spoke with perfect enunciation, wore expensive hearing aids, and built walls so high she forgot what vulnerability felt like. By 30, she had inherited the company, becoming exactly what her father designed, a CEO who never apologized, who commanded rooms with silence more than words. Loneliness seeped through the cracks anyway. At night, in her sterile penthouse, she removed her hearing aids and sat in the dark. The silence was not peaceful, it was empty. Daniel's pain was different, but the wounds were the same. Rachel had worked at Oralis on the autonomous vehicle division. She discovered a critical flaw in the navigation software miscalculated, stopping distances in wet conditions. She documented it, reported it, demanded a delay. Her supervisor, Marcus Hale, the coup, dismissed her as overly cautious. When she threatened to escalate, he reassigned her and buried the reports. 4 months later, the car failed. Rachel died. Marcus scrubbed her records, buried emails, paid off witnesses. The lawsuit collapsed. Daniel tried to keep working, but the anger followed him everywhere until his employers decided he was a liability. He vanished into low-age work, raising Sophie on stories and photographs of the mother who tried to speak up and was silenced. 2 days after the encounter, Vivian returned. No red coat this time, just jeans and a gray sweater. She placed an envelope on the counter. Inside, a handwritten note and an invitation to Oralis. We're developing an AI system for real-time sign language to voice translation. I need someone who understands silence. Someone who knows what it means when the world refuses to listen. I'd like to offer you a consulting position, flexible hours, competitive pay, and a chance to build something that matters. Daniel's instinct was to refuse, to throw the note back, but Sophie appeared, school bag bouncing. She looked at the note, then at her father. Dad, she signed, maybe this time you can fix what hurt us. The words struck deep. At 7, she was wiser than he. Anger wouldn't bring Rachel back. Hiding wouldn't change the past. Maybe there was something worth fighting for. That wasn't revenge. He nodded. I'll come next week. The Oralis building was glass and steel, a monument to progress. The lobby gleamed with marble and LED screens. Daniel felt out of place in his worn jeans and frayed jacket. Sophie held his hand tightly. Vivian met them at the elevator, back in CEO mode, tailored blazer, sharp heels, but her face softened for Sophie. I'm glad you came, she signed. Sophie signed back. This place is big. Do you own all of it? Vivian smiled. I'm in charge. That's different. On the 15th floor, the AI lab occupied an entire wing. Vivian had prepared a private room for Daniel and Sophie, computers, whiteboards, and a corner of toys and books. Employees watched Daniel with curiosity and suspicion. But Vivian made it clear, he was essential. Daniel spent the first week reviewing code, testing sign language recognition, improving accuracy. The work pulled him back into the world he'd left. Despite his anger, he found himself caring about helping people like Sophie, like Vivian, like everyone ignored because the world couldn't be bothered to listen. Vivian stopped by daily. Their conversations mixed speech and signs naturally. Daniel noticed how she relaxed when she signed, shedding the boardroom armor. Sophie charmed the staff with drawings and fearless questions. What's an algorithm? Can computers dream? Then Marcus Hale discovered Daniel's presence. At 40, tall and lean, slicked back hair, eyes like old ice. Marcus had climbed through ruthlessness. He confronted Daniel in the lab. You think your sob story earned you a seat here? Daniel replied quietly. I was invited. Marcus sneered, called Sophie a sympathy card, called Daniel a liability. He left with a thin smile. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Marcus's words echoed. Charity case, liability. Daniel opened his laptop and searched the internal network. 3 hours later, he found an archived server with logs from 3 years ago. Rachel's reports. Marcus's dismissals. A final note. Bury this. No traces. Daniel's hands shook as he downloaded the files. This was the proof Marcus had covered up. He needed to show Vivian, but fear settled in. Marcus could bury it again, and Daniel had Sophie to protect. The next morning he showed Vivian. She read in silence, her face hardening. My father knew, she said quietly. He told Marcus to handle it. I didn't know the details, but I knew something was buried. I've always known. Daniel's anger flared. And you did nothing. Vivian's voice broke. I was 29 and terrified of disappointing him. I've hated myself for it every day. She wiped her eyes. I can't bring Rachel back, but I can make sure Marcus doesn't get away with it again. They spent 2 weeks building the case. Daniel worked late, cross-referencing files. Vivian contacted journalists and investigators, but Marcus moved faster. Rumors spread. Vivian was compromised, sleeping with a subordinate. The board demanded answers. Marcus played the loyal coup, suggesting Vivian needed a break. In a closed-door meeting, they gave her a choice. Step down temporarily, or face a no-confidence vote. She refused. They voted her out. That same day, Daniel was escorted from the building. Contract terminated. Daniel picked up Sophie from daycare. We're going home, he signed. Did we do something wrong? She asked. No, sweetheart. We tried to do something right, and sometimes that's worse. 3 days later, Sophie found a USB drive in Rachel's old box. Daniel plugged it in. Rachel's face appeared recorded 3 days before she died. Daniel, if you're watching this, something went wrong. I've documented everything. The flaw, the warnings, the test footage. It's all here. The video cut to dashcam footage. A test car in rain, speeding toward stopped traffic, crashing despite overrides. Rachel's voice. Marcus, the overrides are failing, shut it down. Daniel wept. Sophie touched his arm. Mom wanted to tell the truth. He called Vivian. She arrived exhausted, watched the video 3 times, then said, "We can use this. Not if we go public. Not if we show it to everyone at once." Vivian made calls to journalists, tech reporters, the FBI. Agents arrived the next morning, took copies, opened an investigation into Oralis for fraud and negligent homicide. The annual shareholders meeting was 5 days away. Vivian had been barred, but she had one card left. She asked Daniel to stand with her. He agreed. The hall was packed. Marcus spoke about innovation and growth. Then Vivian walked in, Daniel and Sophie behind her. Security tried to stop her, but she kept going. She stepped to the podium, removed her hearing aids, set them down with a soft click. She began to sign. The massive screen lit up the AI translation system they had built together. Her words filled the hall. This company silenced truth. Today, silence speaks back. The screen shifted. Rachel's video played. Her warnings. The test footage. The crash. Marcus's voice. The data didn't matter. Gasps rippled. Cameras flashed. FBI agents moved forward, handcuffing Marcus in front of hundreds. "Marcus Hale, you're under arrest for fraud, obstruction of justice, and criminal negligence." The room erupted. Vivian kept signing, tears on her face. Rachel Brooks tried to save lives. She was silenced. Today, I'm giving her back her voice. The fallout was swift. Marcus was charged. The board launched an investigation. Executives resigned or were fired. Oralis's stock plummeted. Lawsuits poured in. Vivian fought to rebuild. She reclaimed control as CEO, free of her father's shadow. She established the Rachel Brooks Foundation for Technology Ethics, Whistleblower Protection, and support for affected families. Daniel became technical director, creating real AI safety standards that put people before profits. Sophie became the face of inclusion, her bright smile and fearless sign language in every campaign. 6 months later, Sophie received cochlear implant surgery, fully funded by the foundation. When it activated, her eyes widened. She heard the monitors, the sheets, her father's breathing. "Dad," she said aloud, voice small and uncertain. Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm right here, sweetheart." Sophie smiled through tears. "You sound like light." Vivian watched from the doorway, present for every moment. She finally understood what Rachel had fought for, not just safety, but connection. 1 year after the arrest, Daniel bought Seattle Brews with settlement money. He kept the name but changed everything. Staff trained in basic sign language, braille menus, quiet hours for sensory sensitivities. It became a space where overlooked people felt welcome. On a bright Sunday morning, Vivian walked in, no hearing aids, red dress, hair down, relaxed. She signed, "Oat milk latte." Daniel smiled, "Always." Sophie ran out, cochlear implant visible, hugged Vivian fiercely. They sat by the window, sunlight warming the table. Daniel poured 3 mugs, Sophie's mostly milk. They didn't need many words. Some conversations happened in silence, some in signs, some in the space between. Vivian reached across and took Daniel's hand. He didn't pull away. Sophie placed her small hand on top. "Listen with your heart," she signed. Daniel smiled. Rachel's words lived on through her daughter, the foundation, every person they helped. Steam rose from the cups. The espresso machine hissed softly. Sophie laughed at something only she understood. For the first time in years, Daniel breathed easily. Vivian looked at him. He looked back. No words. Just understanding. To people who had learned that silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of listening. And sometimes the loudest thing you could do was make space for someone else to be heard. They would keep listening.